I have been very busy in the kitchen recently, cooking up a bunch of meals to freeze for postpartum. I am expecting a baby very soon and really just want to have nourishing, hearty, healthy meals on hand that don't require much effort or any effort at all from me, that will also fuel me while I'm recovering and also feed my family well during this really wonderful but also intense time. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I just got done what feels like the Herculean effort of making a bunch of freezer meals to freeze and store and eat postpartum. If you see, I've got a little friend back here having a snack. Don't mind her. But I am feeling very accomplished, number one, but also I filmed all of this for you guys. I have never been great about this in the past. This, if you're new, this is my my fourth baby, and I really wanted to set us up well this time with just nourishing meals that we can literally just like reheat and eat, that are gonna have a lot of protein, that are gonna have a lot of nutrients, and also just some of like our favorite, you know, go-to things that we like to have on hand that are homemade. So if you guys want to see all the meals that I made to freeze for postpartum this time around, let's get started. The first meal I'm making is broccoli cheddar soup because nothing quite screams comfort meal to me like this soup. I found this recipe online and I will link it down below for you guys. I did actually double this recipe, but I'm just going to give you the regular recipe as I'm talking through it. So you start with melting butter, 4 tablespoons of butter, and then dice up an onion, throw that in, get that cooking in the butter just until the onion is softened, and then add in your minced garlic and just cook that until it's nice and fragrant. It's about like a minute or so. And then you're going to add in flour. This is what's going to help bring some thickness to the soup. And add in your flour, and you just want to keep stirring it and stirring it and stirring it continuously until it's all mixed in. And then I went ahead and added my bone broth, which is going to bring so much nutrition to this, or really nourishment to this soup. It's going to add protein and you know, collagen and gelatin and minerals and vitamins. It's just very, very robust nutrition wise, which is going to be great while I'm healing postpartum. And then I added in the milk, and I did this slowly and continuously stirred while I added it in. And then I basically just added in everything else. So all the broccoli that I chopped up some carrot. It called for a little bit of Dijon mustard. I just mixed that all together, and then I let it simmer for about 20 minutes, basically until like the broccoli softens up and is tender. And then I shredded up a bunch of cheese. I think it calls for like 8 ounces of cheese, but again, I doubled this recipe. And then you just slowly add in the cheese until it gets all thick and melty and delicious. And then once it had fully cooled down, I went ahead and just added it to a Ziploc. And I actually went back, I panicked, I went back and I put all of everything I put in a Ziploc, I basically split into 2 because I felt like I way overfilled them and I was afraid that they were going to explode in my freezer, which would have been devastating to do all of this work and not be able to actually eat the soup at the end of the day. Next, I'm making a lemon chicken Orzo soup. It's kind of like chicken noodle soup, but just a little bit different. So I started off by dicing up some carrot and some onion, and I got that cooking in my Dutch oven pot with some oil, and also added in some minced garlic as well. And once those kind of cooked down, I went ahead and added in, again, a bunch of super nourishing, protein-rich bone broth. And then I took it off the heat. I added I added in chicken. So I had roasted chicken, you know, a few days prior to this. That's how I got all this bone broth as well. And I just cut that up and added that into the pot. And then you add the lemon and the eggs. So the eggs actually are what make this soup kind of creamy, which is interesting. So first I just juiced, it was 3 lemons, and then added in 3 eggs, and you basically just scramble that all up together. Now, this was kind of the part I was nervous about because you want to add this really slowly, and you want to warm up this juice egg mixture a little bit by actually adding some of the existing soup to the bowl, because you want to, when you're like adding this into the big pot of soup, you don't want the eggs to scramble. So you want to kind of warm them up first, and then very, very slowly pour that lemon egg mixture into the pot while you continue to like whisk it up. And you'll see that it really does. I've never made a soup like this before, and it was very cool to actually watch this process go down. It really did make the soup very creamy. And once you got all of the egg mixture in there, I just added in some spinach and also obviously salt and pepper to taste and some fresh dill. Now, obviously you didn't see me add any orzo to the soup, and that's because it just wouldn't freeze super well. So if you're making this fresh, again, I'll have this recipe linked down below because I did find this online as well. If you're making it fresh, you would add in the orzo now, but I am just going to, have somebody cook orzo later on, and then we'll just add it to the soup as we eat it later because it would have just gotten mushy in the freezer and kind of ruined it. So I will be cooking that separately and adding it in later, but my goodness, I cannot wait to eat this. It smelled and tasted from my taste test absolutely delicious. Next, I am making chili. This is just my go-to chili recipe that I make pretty much the same each time, and you guys know I love chili. It is so rich in protein. It's very filling. It's just so easy to reheat and eat whenever you need a hearty meal. So when I make chili, I first start out by dicing up some onion and getting that going in the pot with usually just some avocado oil. Sometimes I dice up pepper. I didn't this time, and add that in as well. But then I'll add some garlic, and I did also double this recipe too, just so you guys know. And recently I've actually been loving ground pork in chili instead of ground beef, which is my go-to. Sometimes we do ground turkey as well, but I've been loving pork, so I just get that in there and basically just cook up the pork. And then once that's pretty much cooked, I will go ahead and add a bunch of diced tomatoes. I usually do for a single batch, just like 28 ounces or two 15-ounce cans of diced tomatoes and one can of tomato paste or jar of tomato paste. But I obviously doubled it this time. And I will mix all of that in. I also added in 2 cans of beans. I did pinto beans and I did black beans. And I also did a bunch of frozen corn as well. So I add all that in, and then I add my spices, typically for chili, obviously salt and pepper. And then I add in lots of cumin. I add a little bit of chili powder because I don't like it too sweet, so I don't do a ton. I'll add in paprika as well, and I basically just mix it all together, put the lid on, and let it simmer for at least like 20 minutes or so, just to let all the flavors kind of meld together. And then I let it, again, cool down on my stovetop, and then went ahead and just put it in a big freezer bag so that I could freeze it for later and we could enjoy it postpartum. Next, I am making a total make-ahead freezer classic, and that is lasagna. Again, I will link this exact recipe down below for you guys that I found and I'm using. So first, you're just going to start by dicing up an onion, and then we're cooking 1 pound of ground beef and 1 pound of ground pork with that onion in my Dutch oven. And then add in your minced garlic, 4 cloves of that, and you're just cooking it until you can really smell that garlic. This is basically us making the meat sauce. So then you're going to, once that's all cooked, add in crushed tomatoes, tomato sauce, tomato paste, a couple tablespoons of sugar, and then also your spices, which in this case are dried basil, parsley, oregano, salt, and pepper. Mix that all together, put the lid on, let it simmer for about 15 minutes or so. And while that meat sauce is simmering, we're going to make our ricotta mixture. So it's just a 15-ounce container of ricotta cheese, 1 egg, a couple teaspoons of dried parsley, and about a half teaspoon of salt. You just mix that all together, and that is ready to spread on. So then I just used like a big, foil pan to make mine, which is just super easy. And then basically you just start by taking, the recipe called for 2 cups of meat sauce for each layer. I ended up doing a little bit more than that because there was just plenty of meat sauce. I feel like 2 to 3 cups is good. So you put that down as your first layer, and then you put down the uncooked lasagna noodles. And the recipe did say make sure that they're like not the no boil, just regular lasagna noodles. Make a layer of those, and then you spread about a third of the ricotta mixture all over those noodles, and then top it with the recipe called for 1.5 cup mozzarella cheese, and then 1/3 cup of Parmesan cheese. And then you basically just repeat to make 2 more layers. So your meat sauce, your uncooked noodles, your ricotta mixture, your mozzarella cheese, and your Parmesan cheese, and you just build it out. And then to freeze it, you want to cover it with plastic wrap to store. And then when it's actually time to cook it, pull it out of the freezer the night before, let it thaw completely overnight in the fridge. Take off the plastic wrap, add on some foil, and then bake it in the oven at 375, covered with the foil for 15 minutes. And then you will take the foil off and cook it for about another 25 minutes longer. The next meal that I made was a burrito casserole, which was super easy to throw together. So first I just started by putting 2 cups of uncooked rice in my Instant Pot. I did 2 cups brown rice, 2 cups water, and cooked it for, I think, 15 minutes. Yeah. And so I got that going. And then on my stovetop, I got 2 pounds of ground beef. This actually makes this recipe, which again, I will link down below for you guys, is already like a double recipe. Cooked 2 pounds of the ground beef with some avocado oil. And then I diced up an onion. I added in the onion and then also a bunch of what I use for taco seasoning. So that is garlic powder, cumin, paprika, chili powder, cayenne pepper, and then obviously some salt and pepper as well. So I just mixed that all together. I tasted it to see if it, needed any adjustments. And then I added in a bag of frozen corn, 2 cans of black beans, and then also a big can of diced tomatoes, and mixed that all together. And that was like our meat mixture. So then I grabbed 2 big pans because, again, this is a double recipe. I had one aluminum one left, and then one regular one I was willing to sacrifice for a few weeks in my freezer. Sprayed them down with avocado oil, and then you basically just spoon in half of the rice into each pan and just kind of spread it out, and then spoon that meat and veggie mixture all over the rice. And then I just shredded up a bunch of cheese, topped them off with cheese. And again, I'm freezing these, so I covered them with plastic wrap, and we'll put them in my freezer. When it's time to actually eat them, we'll pull them out the night before, thaw them in the fridge, and take off the plastic wrap, put some aluminum foil on, bake at 350 for about 45 minutes, and then just take that foil off to bake until the cheese is all melted. And this is such an easy meal, but to top it with some avocado and sour cream that's usually in our fridge, maybe even like some pickled jalapenos, it will be so delicious, so satisfying, very filling, but also, again, super easy. Next, this is not a meal, but it's a staple for us, and that is my sourdough sandwich bread. I wanted to get like 8 loaves into my freezer so that I don't have to worry about making any bread for at least a couple of weeks there. So I will link this recipe down below because I've been using it for quite a while now and I love it. So it is 65 grams of starter, 300 grams of warm water, and then also 56 grams of sugar. I usually just do 50 grams. I actually doubled the recipe this time to make 2 loaves because I was just trying to churn out as many as possible. But once you get all those ingredients in the bowl, you mix it all together, and then you go ahead and add in your flour. I did all-purpose flour. I typically like to do at least half freshly milled whole wheat flour, but I'm actually running really low and need to place another bulk order for my hard white wheat grains. So I just did all-purpose flour this time. 500 grams of flour if you're making 1 loaf, and then you do 20 grams of olive oil and 9 grams of sea salt. You mix that all together until the dough comes together. It's obviously going to be really sticky. And then about 30 minutes or so later, you just do 1 stretch and fold, and then you just let it sit overnight on your countertop. Super easy. And then the next day, pull the dough out of the bowl. If you doubled it, obviously you're going to cut it in half. And you just stretch the dough kind of out into a rectangle, press your fingers in it to get any of the bubbles out, and then just roll it up or actually let it sit for a few minutes, and then come back, roll it up, and shape your loaves. And then I just spray some bread pans with avocado oil, stick them in the bread pans, and then I let them proof for typically like an hour or 2. I just kind of keep an eye on it, depends on the day. And once they're ready to go in the oven, I preheat my oven. The recipe is a little bit different, but in my oven, it's 350 for 35 minutes is perfect for my loaves, but my oven definitely runs hot. So I would go off of what the recipe says if it's your first time trying. And then once they cool down for a few hours, I will go ahead and slice them up. I find the best way to freeze bread is just to do it like do it all the way and then pull it out of the freezer and defrost it, and it turns out really great. I actually love, I've been meaning to show you guys this slicer is the best invention ever. It gives you like the most perfect even bread slices, just like the store, or at least as close as you can get to the store as possible, which just makes my heart very happy. And then I will just put all of the bread sliced up in a bag, freeze it, and then like I said, when we're running low on bread, I'll pull it out the night before. By the next day, it's totally defrosted and it tastes great. And if you toast it, it tastes even better. But I'm actually really impressed with how well this turns out after being frozen and then thawed. Lastly, I really wanted to get a bunch of balls of pizza dough in my freezer because this is actually a pretty easy meal, especially if I let my kids just go to town and do the cheese and sauce and all of that. So this is kind of a recipe that I've tweaked a bunch of times and have used for a long time, so I don't have anything I can link for you, but it's pretty simple, and it is sourdough. So starting with flour, again, I really like to do half all-purpose, half whole wheat, and you do 2 cups of all-purpose and 2 cups of my freshly milled whole wheat flour. I am doubling the recipe here again, but this is just like, I'm going to give you guys like the typical measurements that I usually use, and it makes 4 pizza crusts. So then you add in half a cup of starter, 2 teaspoons of salt, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and 1.5 cups of water. And you just mix that all together and until it's like fully combined. You let it sit overnight on the countertop to ferment. And then the next day I just came back, I pulled the dough out of the fridge. I split it into 4, really 8 because I doubled it. And then I basically just I create little dough balls, I wrap them up in plastic wrap, and I stick them in my freezer. And then when it's time to actually bake them and make pizza out of them, it's really easy. I just pull them out of the freezer. I'll stick them in a bowl I'll put them in a plastic bag so they're not getting soaked, and then I stick them in a bowl of warm water, and they defrost so quickly, like within probably 30 minutes maybe. And then you're ready to make pizza. So that's another easy meal that I know we love. It's sourdough that we can make when baby is here. Okay, you guys, that is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any suggestions for future videos that you would like to see, I am trying to pre-record some for when baby gets here, but then as soon as baby is, we're kind of in a routine here, I'm gonna get back to regular filming, and I'm looking forward to that. So please leave any suggestions or requests down in the comments below, because I really value that feedback. But that is all I have for this video. Thank you guys again so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.